Hey, gun people. O'Shea got shot in Arlington. Why? Well, if you listen to media, poor guy just smoked a little marijuana and the cops killed him for no reason.
Have excluded some of the more disturbing parts, but viewer discretion is still advised. The video shows the Arlington officer talking with the driver who was killed, O'Shea Terry, and Terry's passenger during a traffic stop. The officer smelled marijuana and questioned the two men about that. Terry suddenly starts the SUV and hits the gas despite the officer telling him to stop. The officer hangs onto the window while standing on the running board and fires 5 shots. A handgun and drugs were found in the SUV after the shooting. First,
notice how they slid that in very quickly at the end? A handgun and drugs were found, but nothing to see there. What we really need to show is a white officer shot a poor black man on his way to doctor school.
On Fox 4 News at 10, Allison Harris at the Arlington Police Department with the deadly police shooting investigation. Allison.
Clarice, Arlington police pulled over 24-year-old O'Shea Terry. He was with a friend. They were in the 2400 block of California Lane around 145.
He was with a friend. That's code for fellow gang member and drug dealer. Rick, you can't say he's a drug dealer. Yeah, I can, because they found a lot of freaking drugs in his car and he was armed. And that's usually consistent with dealing and selling drugs.
On Saturday afternoon, the two officers say that they smelled marijuana inside the vehicle. Terry told them that it was a joint. The officers let him know that they would need to search his vehicle. One of the officers went back to their cop car to run their information. The other officer, whose body cam video you see, stood at the side of the SUV. You notice Terry put his hand on the window controls before the incident happens.
You are? Okay, what are you upset about?
He's upset because he knows he's got a gun and you're about to find it and he's going to go to prison. That's why he's upset.
Well, I'm staying outside here. You know? Like I say, if you don't have any more inside the vehicle, y'all should be worried about it. You know? We just have to do what we have to do. So that's basically it. Hey.
Okay. Here's kind of the critical part on whether or not this is going to be a justified shooting or not. Is it reasonable for the officer to try and stop the window and tell the guy and communicate, hey, don't do that? Is it reasonable for the officer to know if he gets this window up, he could probably reach for a weapon and shoot and kill him, and that's what his defense would be? I was in fear of my life. I knew if he rolled up the window, I couldn't see what was going on. I wanted to see in the car to make sure he didn't pull a gun and shoot me, and I was trying to stop the window from coming down so I didn't get shot. Those were all reasonable officer safety issues. They were stopped. They were going to be searched. The poor driver who was on his way to doctor school has prior felonies. I don't know if the officers knew this, but he has prior felonies for burglary and drug possession and selling drugs or something to that effect. They say it here in a minute what his priors are, some of them. They won't say all of them, but I guarantee you they didn't say all of them.
Hey, stop! Stop.
Okay, so, of course, the attorney is saying the cop should have just backed away and let him go at this point. Well, we don't know what they did. We don't know if he have a dead body in the car. We don't know if he's got a gun. We don't know why he's running. If he's just got marijuana, why would he be running? That's not reasonable. Everything that's happening here is unreasonable. It doesn't match. He's crying. He's upset. Why do people start crying when you tell them you're going to search them? Because they know they're going to prison. So, in the officer's mind, he knew that this guy had more or did something more than just a marijuana cigarette. But again, was his fear reasonable and were his actions reasonable? At this point, with the window up with his fingers in there, is it reasonable for him to use that window so he doesn't fall when the vehicle started moving? Is it reasonable for his fingers to get caught because the guy rolled up the fingers on, or the window on his fingers? Again, all this will come out in the wash. Okay, so shooting five shots through the window.
This all starts with the officer asking Terry what he is upset about. Terry takes a moment, then he starts to roll up the window. The officer grabs the window and says, hey, stop. At that time, the officer also jumped onto the runners of the SUV, so he's on the vehicle.
Okay, so they're saying he jumped on the runners. They're not saying why he jumped on the runners. Did he jump on there to risk his life so he could just shoot the guy? Of course, that's what the left-wing media will push. He's a white cop trying to kill a black man. But is it reasonable that if your fingers are caught in a window and you're hanging on so you don't fall, that you just jump on a car and maybe you think the guy will stop if he sees you on a car and you've got a gun and saying don't drive, don't reach for a gun, don't shoot, don't run off and kill some innocent family because you're running from the cops? We know we're going to be in a pursuit after this. You're going to endanger the public. You're going to be a danger to others. You're going to be a danger to cops chasing you. Is it reasonable that we don't want to get in a pursuit when we stop you and you start driving off because you have drugs in the car? It sounds reasonable to me, but I'm sure there'll be some people here saying I'm being unreasonable.
You hear Terry start the SUV as the officer continues to tell him to stop. Terry says, "I ain't giving up, bro. I ain't going nowhere," then hits the gas. Almost immediately, the officer starts shooting into the vehicle. Terry's friend, the passenger, is yelling for Terry to stop.
The fact that he almost immediately started shooting means he immediately recognized he was in danger. His life was in jeopardy. If he was on this car, he couldn't jump off, and if he did jump off, he was going to get seriously bodily injury, and this guy would continue on and maybe hurt other people. Was it reasonable for him to shoot? I got no problem with the shoot. Do I have a problem with cops jumping in front of cars or jumping on cars? Yeah. I don't think that ought to be a course of routine to put yourself in jeopardy in order to shoot somebody. But this one's a little different because it happened very quickly, and the guy tried to stop the window from going up. His finger was already hanging on the window. When a car started moving and his hand was hanging on the window, he probably didn't want to fall with a gun in his hand. He only had one hand to support himself because he had his gun in his other hand. So jumping on the running board was maybe the safest course of action so he didn't get run over by the back wheel or dragged down the highway and rolled under the back wheel. Was his life in jeopardy, and who put his life in jeopardy? Now, of course, the victim will always say the cop put his own life in jeopardy. In this case, I think the guy with the gun and the drugs and the trying to run off and saying I ain't going to jail and being over emotional, I think he caused this incident. But in this day and age, ain't no damn telling. It'll all come down to color like everything else. White guilty, white male guilty, black victim.
Stop. Eventually, the SUV crashes out and the officer falls off and rolls onto the street. Now, there is another video from the patrol car dash cam. Terry was taken to the hospital after this, where he died. His friend, the passenger, was not shot. Terry does have a criminal history. Between 2012 and 2016, he pleaded guilty to burglary of a building, 2 charges of possession of marijuana, and evading arrest.
He pleaded guilty. Those are the only things they say. They didn't say the other 32 arrests that were dropped for lack of evidence, that were dropped in the interest of justice because they weren't going to get enough time. They didn't list all those. And you notice they only gave a 4-year period because he's 24, because they don't want to go into his juvenile past and all his other previous crimes. Rick, you can't say that. Yeah, I can't say it. I just said it.
Police say inside the SUV, when they searched, they found a Glock and extended.
That's a lot of ecstasy he's selling. He's not using all that. Over a pound of marijuana, packaged for sale. When you have your marijuana, most people who use marijuana don't feel the need to put it in these little packages. People that sell marijuana put it in these little packages. So he was in possession for sales. He had a gun. He was armed while committing a felony. He drove off. This ought to be a case closed. He's the crook. He's the bad guy. Tough titties. He got shot. Move on. But that won't be the case. Why? Because he was a black guy on the way to doctor school. Freaking just crazy how many billions and trillions of dollars is spent on ignorance in our legal system, defending criminals, crooks, crimes, illegals, border crossers, gang members. Jesus.
Extended 29-round magazine, marijuana, and ecstasy. Now, the officer who shot and killed him is on administrative leave right now. We asked Arlington Police why they released this video. It's been less than a week since this incident. They say that is all for transparency. They want the public to be able to see what happened and decide for themselves about what they think about this incident. Clarice?
Allison Harris at the Arlington Police Department, thank you. Now let's go to Fox 4 reporter Blake Hansen. He talked tonight with O'Shea Terry's family attorney. And
Ah, geez, whatever. All right. Look, I don't know if the cop was 100% right, but tie goes to the cop. In my book, when a cop is out there doing police work and doing a job trying to protect the community, and the other party has got a lot of criminal history, is armed with a gun, is armed with a lot of dope where he's selling, and he's putting the community at risk, if anything goes bad, it's automatically bad guy's fault and good guy walks. In my book and in my world. You may not like it. That's where I stand. We'll end that there.